Stop everything you are doing right now, because what you are about to hear is going to permanently alter the way you see yourself, the way you move through the world, and the way other people respond to you. Not temporarily, not for a few hours after a motivational video fades from memory. Permanently. Most people will spend their entire lives waiting to feel confident, waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances, the right opportunity to finally arrive. They keep telling themselves that once they secure the promotion, once they lose the weight, once they find the right relationship, once some external condition finally aligns, then they will feel confident enough to pursue what they actually want. That moment never comes, and somewhere beneath all the noise, you already know exactly why. Confidence is not something that arrives from the outside. It is not delivered by circumstance, or granted by other people, or bestowed by some achievement you have not yet reached. It is forged from the inside, through a precise and deliberate process that almost nobody truly understands, and even fewer people actually commit to executing. What you are about to learn in this audiobook is that exact process. This is not a pep talk. This is not a collection of motivational phrases engineered to make you feel energized for 45 minutes before reality reasserts itself. This is the complete psychological architecture of what the most formidable, most respected, and most genuinely influential human beings on the planet actually operate from at the deepest level. By the time you finish this, you will not merely understand dangerous confidence intellectually. You will begin to embody it from the inside out. And once that process begins, once you genuinely feel what it means to operate from this place, you will never voluntarily return to anything less. The version of you that exists on the other side of this material is not someone who simply feels better about themselves in comfortable situations. It is someone who is fundamentally different in every situation, familiar or foreign, high pressure or relaxed, supported or completely alone. That is what is waiting for you if you commit fully to what follows. Most people walk around carrying an entirely distorted understanding of what confidence actually is. They believe it is this magical sensation you either possess or you do not. They think it involves pumping yourself up with positive affirmations, standing like a superhero in front of the bathroom mirror, or convincing yourself that you are extraordinary, even when every single fiber of your being disagrees. That perspective is not merely misguided, it is completely wrong and actively harmful to your development. That approach is self-deception dressed in motivational language, and your subconscious knows the difference even when your conscious mind is working hard to believe otherwise. Real confidence, the variety that makes you genuinely formidable in any situation you walk into, has absolutely nothing to do with feelings in the moment. It is not rooted in emotions or mantras or performing a polished version of yourself that you do not actually inhabit. Dangerous confidence is about knowing with certainty, deep in your core, that whatever circumstance you step into, whatever individual you are engaging with, whatever obstacle or complexity life sends in your direction, you possess the mental instruments and psychological frameworks to navigate through it. That knowledge is what creates unshakable confidence. Full stop. Not because you are performing, not because you were born with some genetic predisposition toward it, not because you somehow acquired a natural disposition that others were simply not given. Confidence is a skill. It is completely acquirable, fully trainable, and it operates according to precise and identifiable psychological principles. Once you internalize these principles, you do not merely become somewhat more confident. You become dangerously confident. The kind of person who reshapes the energy of any space they enter simply by being present. The kind whose words carry genuine weight because they are backed by inner certainty rather than performed bravado. The kind that others instinctively defer to and naturally want to follow without fully understanding why. By the time you complete this audiobook through mind psychology, you will never perceive confidence through the same distorted lens again. You are going to encounter the authentic psychology behind unshakable confidence. You are going to discover precisely why virtually everything you have previously been taught about building it is fundamentally inverted. And you are going to receive a systematic approach that produces genuine and lasting results faster than anything you have previously encountered. But understand this clearly. What is being shared here is not constructed for every person who stumbles across it. This is specifically for individuals who are completely finished with ordinary performance. This is for people who have made a genuine decision to function at a level that 99% of the population will never achieve or even seriously attempt. Chapter 1. The Lies Keeping You Powerless. Before we construct dangerous confidence on a foundation that will actually hold, we need to thoroughly dismantle the toxic falsehoods you have been fed your entire life regarding what confidence is and how it genuinely develops. Because as long as you continue accepting these lies as truth, every method, every technique, and every approach will ultimately fail to produce lasting results. The lies are that persistent and that corrosive. Lie number 1. Positive thinking generates confidence. This is arguably the most destructive guidance ever offered on the topic of personal development, and it has been repeated so many times by so many sources that it has acquired the appearance of established wisdom. The concept that you can think your way to confidence by reciting affirmations is not merely incorrect. It is psychologically corrosive in ways that most people never recognize because the damage operates beneath conscious awareness. When you attempt to convince yourself of something your inner self fundamentally rejects, your subconscious registers the deception immediately. Your brain has access to your complete history of experiences, your actual track record, the real evidence of what you have and have not accomplished. It recognizes immediately when you are trying to gaslight yourself into a belief system that the evidence does not support. So rather than constructing genuine confidence, you produce persistent internal conflict. You are engaged in an ongoing argument with yourself, and your brain is fully aware at every moment that you are not being truthful. Genuine confidence does not emerge from positive thinking or carefully crafted self-talk. It arises from evidence, from demonstrated proof, from an accumulated record of confronting difficult situations and emerging with greater capability than before. Your subconscious does not respond meaningfully to affirmations. It responds to actual lived experience, to tangible data confirming your real capacity to navigate adversity. When you attempt to bypass this with manufactured positivity, you are constructing your confidence on fundamentally unstable ground. The instant real pressure arrives, that fabricated confidence evaporates completely. Lie number 2. Confident people are naturally immune to fear. This misconception destroys more developing confidence than almost any other falsehood, because it creates an impossible standard that no genuine human being can meet. The reality is that genuinely confident individuals experience fear consistently. Anxiety, uncertainty, hesitation, doubt, moments of genuine apprehension. They encounter all of it just as you do. The distinction is not what they experience internally. It is what they choose to do in spite of those internal experiences. They have developed, through deliberate practice and accumulated exposure, the capacity to move forward while fear is fully present, not after fear has conveniently departed. They have internalized that genuine courage is not the absence of fear. It is sustained and decisive action despite the ongoing presence of fear. When you operate under the belief that truly confident people simply do not get frightened, you set yourself up for certain failure. Because the moment you feel nervous, you automatically conclude that something is fundamentally wrong with your psychology. You tell yourself you are not yet sufficiently confident. You convince yourself you require more preparation before taking action. This creates a destructive pattern in which you are perpetually waiting to feel prepared. And here is the unsparing truth. The fear never completely disappears for anyone. You either develop the genuine capacity to act while fear is present, or you remain in a holding pattern indefinitely, waiting for a feeling of readiness that never arrives. Lie number 3. Confidence is fundamentally about believing in yourself. This concept sounds genuinely inspiring, and there is a surface-level logic to it that makes it easy to accept. But the structure of the idea is actually inverted. Authentic confidence is not primarily about believing in yourself in the conventional sense. It is about trusting your capacity to figure things out as you move through them. Knowing that even without every answer pre-assembled in advance, you possess the mental flexibility and psychological resilience to adapt and push through whatever presents itself in real time. This distinction matters enormously in practical terms. When your focus centers on believing in yourself, you are placing crushing pressure on yourself to already be the fully formed version of the person you aspire to become. You are demanding capabilities you have not yet developed. This generates massive psychological strain and positions you for disappointment when reality does not conform to the belief you are forcing. But when your focus shifts to trusting your ability to figure things out as the situation unfolds, you eliminate that destructive pressure. You grant yourself genuine permission to not have every answer pre-packaged. Permission to learn as the situation develops. Permission to be a human being navigating real complexity in real time without the impossible requirement of already being fully arrived. Lie number 4. Fake it until you make it is a reliable path to genuine confidence. This may be the single most damaging confidence advice ever given wide distribution, and it has persisted across decades because it contains a small grain of truth buried beneath a fundamentally flawed core premise. The notion that you can consistently simulate confidence you do not genuinely possess, maintain that simulation long enough, and eventually discover that authentic confidence has materialized underneath the performance. This is not simply ineffective. It is actively counterproductive and deeply entrenching in its negative effects. When you are performing confidence you do not authentically inhabit, you exist in a state of persistent psychological tension. You are continuously monitoring your performance, concerned about exposure, exhausting your mental and emotional resources maintaining a facade rather than directing those resources toward building actual capability. This relentless self-consciousness is the precise opposite of what authentic confidence feels and functions like. Real confidence is a state of unconscious competence. When you are so genuinely at ease with who you are that you are not analyzing your confidence levels at all, you are simply operating as yourself, fully engaged with the situation and handling whatever materializes. When you are performing confidence, you exist in conscious incompetence, and that internal friction radiates outward in ways that other people detect immediately, even when they cannot consciously name what they are sensing. The essential failure of all 4 of these lies is that they concentrate entirely on managing your psychological experience rather than developing genuine underlying capability. They are designed to help you feel confident in the short term rather than to actually become a genuinely confident person. True confidence is not about how you feel in any particular moment. It is about who you have actually become, the real skills you have cultivated, the genuine difficulties you have successfully navigated, the authentic competencies you have built and can rely on when it matters most. Chapter 2. The Brain Science Behind Confidence. To build dangerous confidence that holds under pressure, you need to understand precisely how confidence operates at the neurological level. Confidence is not simply a mood state that arrives and departs based on external conditions. It is a specific neurological process that follows predictable and reproducible patterns. Once you comprehend these patterns with genuine clarity, you can deliberately activate them through the right sequence of actions and experiences. Your brain contains 2 primary systems that together determine your experience of confidence in any situation: the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. The limbic system is your emotional brain, ancient in, evolutionary terms, extraordinarily rapid in its processing, and powerfully influential over your behavior. It was engineered by millions of years of evolution to preserve your survival by detecting potential threats and triggering immediate fight, flight, or freeze responses before your rational mind even becomes fully aware of the situation. The prefrontal cortex is your rational brain, the most recently evolved region of your neural architecture. slower in processing, but considerably more sophisticated in capability. It handles complex analytical thinking, extended strategic planning, nuanced decision-making, and the ability to weigh long-term consequences rather than reacting purely to immediate circumstances. Here is the precise sequence of events that occurs when you lack confidence. Your limbic system encounters a social challenge, a difficult conversation, or any situation where the outcome is uncertain, and it interprets that situation as a potential threat. It floods your entire system with stress hormones. These hormones suppress your prefrontal cortex function and shift you into a primitive survival orientation. In this state, clear thinking becomes genuinely difficult. You cannot access your full intellectual capacity. You cannot perform at your real ability level. You become reactive rather than intentional, instinct-driven rather than strategic. But here is the insight that fundamentally changes how you understand confidence development. Your limbic system has no reliable mechanism for distinguishing between actual physical danger and social or professional challenge. It cannot reliably differentiate the threat level of a high-stakes job interview from a genuinely life-threatening situation. It responds to both with similar physiological intensity based on pattern recognition and past conditioning. This is precisely why you can feel genuinely terrified in circumstances that are objectively completely safe. Your ancient neural architecture is processing a professional conversation as though your literal survival is contingent on the outcome. Dangerous confidence develops progressively as you train your brain through repeated experience to recognize that the vast majority of social and professional challenges are not genuine threats. When your limbic system learns to remain composed, your prefrontal cortex stays fully operational. You can think with remarkable clarity under significant pressure, communicate effectively in demanding situations, and reach sound strategic decisions precisely when the stakes are elevated and it matters most. The fundamental mechanism underlying all of this is neuroplasticity, your brain's extraordinary capacity to continuously reorganize its structure and function based on accumulated experience. Every time you face a challenging situation and navigate through it successfully, you are physically constructing new neural pathways that register this message. This type of situation is manageable. I have proven I can handle this. Every time you retreat from a challenge or allow fear to make your decisions for you, you reinforce pathways communicating a different and limiting message. This situation is genuinely dangerous. Avoidance is the appropriate response. This neurological reality explains with precision why deliberate and structured exposure works so effectively in building confidence. When you repeatedly encounter situations that previously triggered fear responses in a controlled and intentional manner, your brain progressively learns and records that these situations do not represent actual danger to your well-being. The fear response diminishes with each successful exposure until it no longer controls your behavioral choices the way it once did. But here is where most people make a critical error. They believe they must immediately confront their most intimidating fears directly and completely. This approach typically fails because it overwhelms the nervous system entirely, which actually reinforces rather than reduces the fear response. The mechanism that actually produces results is graduated and progressive exposure. You begin with challenges positioned just slightly beyond your current comfort boundary, situations that generate productive stress without completely overwhelming your regulatory capacity. You develop genuine competence and comfort at that level. Then you advance intentionally to marginally greater challenges. You continue escalating in a measured progression, always operating at the productive edge of your comfort zone without crossing into the paralyzing territory that does more harm than good. This approach functions through a phenomenon called stress inoculation. When you expose yourself to manageable levels of genuine challenge on a repeated basis, your nervous system develops real resilience. Your baseline tolerance for pressure increases substantially. Circumstances that previously overwhelmed you begin to feel navigable. Situations that once stopped you completely begin to feel energizing rather than threatening. There is another profoundly important neurological component to understand: mirror neurons. These specialized brain cells activate both when you personally perform an action and when you observe someone else performing it. Mirror neurons are the mechanism through which you absorb social behaviors, pick up on emotional states, and the reason why confidence is genuinely and measurably contagious through social proximity. When you spend significant time around genuinely confident people, your mirror neurons activate in response to their behavioral patterns. Your brain begins adopting their neural configurations organically without conscious effort on your part. This is why confidence spreads through social environments naturally, and equally why insecurity propagates with the same efficiency. You literally absorb psychological states from the people surrounding you on a regular basis. This reality carries substantial implications for your deliberate development. If you intend to become dangerously confident, you must immerse yourself consistently in environments where that level of confidence is the standard expectation, not the exception. Study individuals who genuinely embody the confidence you are building. Observe with real depth and attention how they think, how they carry themselves physically, how they communicate under various conditions, how they reach decisions when the stakes are elevated. Your mirror neurons will begin adopting these behavioral patterns automatically over time. The final neurological component worth understanding is dopamine's critical role in the confidence cycle. Dopamine is frequently and inaccurately described as simply the pleasure chemical, but it is more precisely the anticipation chemical. It is released when your brain is expecting a positive outcome, and it plays a critical role in both motivation and the experience of confidence. When you have established a meaningful track record of success in an area, your brain develops a genuine expectation of positive outcomes in similar situations. This expectation triggers dopamine release, which produces the motivated, forward-leaning, confident orientation you want to operate from when approaching new challenges. But when you have established a track record of failure or persistent avoidance, your brain develops an expectation of negative outcomes. This suppresses dopamine production and generates unmotivated, insecure internal states that feel impossible to escape. This neurological reality explains precisely why accumulating a record of small and consistent victories is absolutely critical to building genuine confidence. Every time you succeed at something meaningful, even something that appears minor from the outside, you are training your brain to anticipate success in related situations. You are building positive momentum that compounds over time in powerful ways. You are literally restructuring your default neural orientation from one that defaults toward insecurity to one that defaults naturally toward confident expectation. There is an additional neurological mechanism worth understanding in depth because it is the one most directly under your conscious control in the short term. The role of your reticular activating system, or RAS, in determining what information your brain pays attention to, and therefore what patterns it registers and reinforces. Your RAS functions as a filtering system that determines which of the enormous quantity of stimuli in your environment actually reach your conscious awareness. It prioritizes information that is consistent with what your brain has already been programmed to expect and to seek. When your brain is operating from a self-image of insecurity and inadequacy, your RAS filters your experience to prioritize and emphasize information that confirms that self-image. The times others seem dismissive, moments your efforts fall short, the situations where you feel out of your depth. When your brain begins operating from a self-image of capability and genuine confidence, your RAS shifts its filtering to prioritize information consistent with that updated self-image. The moments of genuine competence, the times others respond to you with respect, the situations where you navigate difficulties successfully. This neurological reality means that building a genuine track record of small but real successes does not merely provide evidence for your rational mind to evaluate. It physically reprograms the filtering system through which you experience your entire life. You begin literally noticing different things, which creates a fundamentally different experience of yourself and your capabilities, which in turn generates more genuinely confident behavior that produces more of the successful outcomes your RAS is now primed to notice and register. Understanding the neurological basis of confidence also illuminates why the social environment you habitually occupy has such profound and lasting effects on your confidence development. Your brain is continuously being shaped by the experiences it processes, and a significant portion of those experiences consist of the behavioral patterns, attitudes, and emotional states of the people you spend the most time with. This is not a metaphorical influence. It is a literal neurological process through which the confidence or insecurity of your social environment is absorbed into the structure of your own brain over time. Choosing your social environment with deliberate intentionality is therefore not a luxury or a superficial lifestyle preference. It is one of the most important and highest leverage decisions you can make in your confidence development. The environment that surrounds you every day is either continuously reinforcing the neural patterns of confidence or continuously reinforcing the neural patterns of insecurity, regardless of any deliberate personal development work you are doing in parallel. Chapter 3. The Confidence Operating System. Now that you understand the neuroscience at a genuine level, it is time to discuss the practical system for building dangerous confidence in your actual life. This is not about motivation or mindset tricks that produce a temporary emotional shift. This is about installing a completely new operating system that automatically generates confident thinking, confident behavior, and confident presence in any situation you encounter. This system has 4 core components: competence stacking, social calibration, emotional regulation, and reality distortion. Each one is essential. Each one builds on and amplifies the others. Competence stacking is the foundation of the entire system, and most people miss it entirely because they are looking in the wrong direction. Most people attempt to build confidence by working on their self-esteem, their mindset, their internal narrative, their self-talk. This approach is inverted. Real confidence does not come from improved self-perception. It comes from real and demonstrable competence, from actually being skilled at things that genuinely matter, from possessing capabilities you can rely on when circumstances become difficult and the pressure is real. Here is how the process works in practice. You begin by identifying the specific areas of your life where confidence matters most to your actual goals and daily experience. Professional situations, social interactions, leadership scenarios, high-pressure conversations. For each of these areas, you identify with specificity the concrete skills that confident and effective people actually possess and deploy. Then you systematically develop those competencies through deliberate and focused practice over time. Not casual repetition, but genuine, deliberate practice with attention to feedback and quality. For example, if you want genuine confidence in professional environments, key competencies might include clear and organized communication, strategic thinking under pressure, effective conflict resolution, polished presentation skills, relationship building through authentic networking, and deep, substantive expertise in your domain. You do not attempt to develop all of these simultaneously. You select one. You focus on it intensely and consistently until you reach the level of genuine competence where you no longer have to consciously think about it. Then, you advance to the next competency. The critical element here is specificity of focus. Instead of pursuing the vague goal of becoming more confident at work, you focus your effort on becoming genuinely excellent at specific and identifiable skills that directly generate confidence in work environments. Instead of pursuing the equally vague goal of becoming more socially confident, you develop specific social skills. Reading body language with accuracy, initiating conversations with ease, telling engaging stories that hold attention, managing group dynamics effectively. This approach works because your subconscious cannot honestly argue with genuine, demonstrated competence. When you know with certainty that you are actually skilled at something, when you have real and undeniable proof of your capabilities through experience and results, confidence in that domain happens automatically and organically. You do not need to manufacture a feeling or convince yourself of anything. You simply know what you are capable of, and that knowledge creates unshakable inner certainty that no external challenge can dissolve. Social calibration is your developed ability to read social situations with accuracy and respond with genuine appropriateness. Most people who struggle with confidence have poor social calibration. They either consistently misread social dynamics, or they are so preoccupied with how they are being perceived that they cannot focus their attention on what is actually happening in the interaction around them. Dangerous confidence requires sharp and reliable social calibration as a foundation. You need to be able to walk into any room and quickly assess the social dynamics at work, the power structures present, the unspoken rules operating beneath the surface, the emotional undercurrents influencing how people are behaving. You need to understand not merely what people are saying in words, but what they are actually communicating through their tone, their body language, and the subtext beneath their explicit statements. You need to register subtle cues that most people miss entirely because their attention is divided between the external situation and their internal self-monitoring. This skill develops progressively through focused and intentional attention to social dynamics in every interaction you participate in. Start paying careful and deliberate attention to how people position themselves in social spaces. Observe who speaks first in group settings, who gets interrupted and by whom, who others instinctively look to for signals when decisions are being made or approval is being sought. Track patterns in how conversations flow and evolve, how decisions actually get reached in group settings, how influence gets exercised and by what means. Also, study people who already embody the high-confidence social presence you are building. Watch specifically how they enter rooms, how they position their bodies, how they employ their voice as a tool, how they handle disagreement without losing composure, how they command and sustain attention without appearing to grasp for it. You are not copying their surface behaviors, but identifying and internalizing the underlying principles of confident social navigation. The goal is developing social awareness sharp enough that you always understand where you genuinely stand in any interaction. You can sense when someone is testing your responses, when you are being challenged, when someone is attempting to shift the dynamic. You feel when the energy in a room changes in significant ways. You can distinguish between genuine interest and polite disengagement. This level of social intelligence eliminates the majority of the uncertainty that creates insecurity in social environments. Emotional regulation is your developed capacity to manage your internal emotional state regardless of what is happening in the external environment around you. The vast majority of people experience confidence that is entirely contingent on how they feel in any particular moment. When they feel good and secure, they operate with confidence. When they feel anxious or uncertain, their confidence completely disappears. Dangerous confidence means your internal operating state is largely independent of external circumstances and other people's behavior. You feel centered and genuinely capable whether you are being praised or criticized, whether conditions are favorable or falling apart, whether you are operating in familiar territory or completely outside your established experience. This capacity does not mean suppressing or eliminating your emotional responses. It means developing the ability to prevent those emotions from controlling your behavior and undermining your performance. You feel genuine fear, but act with courage anyway. You feel real uncertainty, but make clear decisions anyway. You feel significant pressure, but perform with composure anyway. Emotional regulation develops through 3 interconnected mechanisms that work together. Breath control provides the fastest available pathway to directly influencing your nervous system state. When you deliberately control the pace and depth of your breathing, you directly influence your heart rate, your stress hormone levels, and your available mental clarity. Deep and slow diaphragmatic breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the calm and collected state that produces confident performance. Cognitive reframing involves consciously changing how you interpret and assign meaning to the situations you encounter. Instead of experiencing challenges as personal threats, you practice seeing them as genuine opportunities. Instead of interpreting criticism as a personal attack on your worth, you practice receiving it as potentially useful data. Instead of experiencing failure as evidence of inadequacy, you practice treating it as valuable information for your ongoing development. Exposure conditioning involves systematically and intentionally placing yourself in situations that trigger your emotional reactivity so that you build tolerance and develop greater conscious control over your responses over time. Similar in principle to the progressive exposure discussed earlier, but specifically focused on developing emotional regulation rather than general competence building. Reality distortion is your developed capacity to shape other people's perception of you and of the situation through the quality of your presence, your energy, and your communication. When you master this element, you do not simply respond to social dynamics as they present themselves. You actively create them. You do not merely adapt to the energy present in a room. You establish it. This might initially sound like manipulation, but it is not about deception or control of others. It is about taking genuine responsibility for the energy you bring into every interaction. Being so clear and grounded in your own identity and values that others naturally orient around your frame of reference. Reality distortion operates through what psychologists refer to as presence. Presence is a complex combination of genuine confidence, authentic self-expression, and focused outward attention that together create a magnetic quality in your interactions. When you develop true presence, people are naturally drawn to your perspective, want to hear what you have to say, trust your judgment in situations of uncertainty, and naturally follow your lead. Presence at this level develops through the genuine integration of all the other components of this system. When you have real competence, accurate social calibration, and strong emotional regulation working together, presence emerges organically. You become someone others instinctively respect and genuinely want to engage with, not because of any technique you are applying, but because of who you have actually become through the development process. Chapter 4. Destroying Self-Doubt Forever. Self-doubt is not merely an unpleasant feeling that visits occasionally. It is a sophisticated psychological warfare system that your own mind deploys against your ambitions, your performance, and your sense of genuine capability. Until you understand exactly how this internal system operates, until you can recognize its specific tactics and develop reliable defenses against them, you will never achieve the dangerous confidence that your potential demands and your goals require. Self-doubt operates like a persistent and adaptive virus in your mental operating system, continuously running background programs that undermine your performance and erode your confidence precisely when you need it most. The first and most important thing you need to understand about self-doubt is that it is not rational in its operation. It does not function according to logic or evidence. Self-doubt is an emotional defense mechanism your brain developed over evolutionary time to protect you from the social consequences of rejection, failure, and tribal exile. In the ancestral environment in which your brain was shaped, being rejected by your social group meant genuine danger. Your brain evolved sophisticated early warning systems to detect any possibility of social rejection and trigger powerful avoidance behaviors designed to keep you safely within the group's accepted norms. The fundamental problem is that this ancient survival mechanism is profoundly inappropriate for most modern life circumstances. Your brain still responds to a difficult professional conversation as though your survival is genuinely at stake. Still generates a fear response to the possibility of failure as though the consequences were life and death rather than temporary and recoverable setbacks. This is why self-doubt feels so disproportionately intense and overwhelming in situations that are objectively not dangerous. It is not merely an inconvenient emotional experience. It is your survival instincts misfiring in situations where those instincts are completely counterproductive to your actual well-being. Self-doubt deploys 5 primary tactics against you: catastrophizing, mind-reading, fortune-telling, personalization, and all-or-nothing thinking. Understanding these specific tactics is the essential first step in building reliable defenses against them. Catastrophizing is the pattern in which your mind automatically and immediately jumps to the worst possible outcome of any uncertain situation. You need to give a presentation, and your brain instantly begins generating a vivid mental movie of everything that could potentially go wrong. You will forget everything you prepared. The technology will fail at the critical moment. Everyone will conclude you are incompetent. You will lose your position. Your professional reputation will be permanently damaged. Your entire career trajectory will be derailed. This is not legitimate preparation or realistic planning. This is psychological self-sabotage dressed in the language of prudent concern. When you catastrophize consistently, you are programming your brain to expect and prepare for disaster, which creates the exact anxiety and internal tension that makes some form of failure significantly more likely to occur. Mind reading is the pattern in which you presume to know what other people are thinking about you, and you consistently and automatically assume that their judgment is negative. Someone fails to make eye contact during an important meeting, and you instantly conclude they are frustrated with you. Someone does not respond to your contribution with visible enthusiasm, so you assume they find you unimpressive. Someone looks briefly skeptical while you are presenting your perspective, so you immediately conclude they believe you are incompetent. The reality is that you have absolutely no reliable access to what other people are actually thinking at any given moment. And the further reality, the one that takes genuine courage to fully accept, is that the vast majority of the time, other people are not thinking about you in any focused way at all. They are absorbed in their own concerns, their own challenges, their own internal narratives. They are not conducting a sustained critical analysis of your every behavior and finding you consistently lacking. Fortune-telling is the pattern in which you predict negative outcomes for your efforts with absolute certainty, despite having no genuine basis for that certainty. You decide not to apply for a professional opportunity because you are completely certain you will not be selected. You do not initiate a potentially important conversation because you are certain it will go badly. You do not launch an idea or project you genuinely believe in because you are certain it will fail. This is not wisdom or realistic expectation management. This is a self-fulfilling mechanism. When you predict failure with sufficient certainty, you either do not attempt the thing at all, or you approach it with so little commitment and energy that failure becomes the inevitable outcome. Either way, you guarantee the negative result you predicted, and then use that result as evidence that your prediction was accurate. Personalization is the pattern in which you take personal responsibility for outcomes and events that have little or nothing to do with you. Someone is visibly irritable, and you immediately assume their emotional state is a direct response to something you did or failed to do. A collaborative project encounters problems, and you assign yourself primary responsibility, despite the involvement of multiple other people and factors. A social interaction feels awkward, and you conclude that your social inadequacy was the cause. This pattern creates a persistent and distorted sense that you are the central cause of most negative events around you. It also generates enormous psychological pressure and unnecessary ongoing guilt for circumstances you did not create and cannot control. All or nothing thinking is the pattern in which you perceive your performance, your worth, and your progress in extreme binary terms with no middle ground. Either you performed flawlessly or you failed completely. Either you know everything about a topic or you know nothing worth sharing. Either you succeeded entirely or your effort was worthless. No nuance, no spectrum, no acknowledgement of partial success or incremental progress. This framework makes genuine human performance impossible to experience as adequate, because nobody performs flawlessly at anything consistently. Nobody knows everything about anything, and nobody succeeds at everything they attempt. The reason these patterns are so persistently effective is that each one contains a grain of genuine truth. Things do sometimes go wrong in ways we did not anticipate. People do sometimes judge us negatively. We are sometimes genuinely responsible for negative outcomes. But self-doubt extracts these occasional realities and converts them into absolute and universal certainties. It makes infrequent exceptions into presumed rules. It transforms possibilities into presumed inevitabilities. Defending against these patterns requires a practice psychologists call cognitive diffusion. This is the developed ability to recognize your thoughts as mental events that are occurring within your experience, rather than as objective truths about external reality. Instead of thinking with full conviction that you are going to fail at something important, you practice thinking the more accurate statement, "I am having the thought that I am going to fail." This small but significant shift in language creates genuine psychological distance between you and your automatic thoughts. It reminds you consistently that thoughts are not facts, regardless of how emotionally compelling they feel in the moment. You also need to develop what might be called an evidence standard for evaluating your own self-assessments. Instead of accepting negative automatic thoughts as though they were established facts, you require actual evidence before accepting them. When your internal narrative tells you that everyone in the room thinks you are incompetent, you immediately ask, what specific observable evidence supports that conclusion? When your internal narrative tells you that you are certainly going to fail at a particular challenge, you ask, what specific evidence makes this particular outcome inevitable rather than merely possible? In the vast majority of cases, you will discover that there is no genuine evidence for your most negative automatic thoughts. They are emotional reactions that have learned to wear the disguise of rational analysis. When you consistently apply this evidence standard to your negative self-assessments, those assessments progressively lose their automatic authority over your behavior and your confidence. The final and perhaps most powerful defense against self-doubt is developing genuine self-compassion. This is the cultivated ability to treat yourself with the same fundamental kindness and understanding that you would naturally extend to someone you care about who is navigating a difficult situation. Most people apply a dramatically harsher internal standard to their own performance and struggles than they would ever consider applying to another person they respected. Self-compassion is not about abandoning your standards or settling for mediocre performance. It is about maintaining your standards while acknowledging that you are a human being who is learning, developing, and doing your best with the resources and understanding you currently possess. It is about understanding that mistakes and failures are not evidence of fundamental inadequacy. They are an unavoidable and necessary component of genuine growth and development. When you develop authentic self-compassion as a daily practice, self-doubt loses the majority of its operational power. You stop experiencing every mistake as confirmation that you are fundamentally insufficient. You stop interpreting every difficult challenge as evidence that you do not belong where you are attempting to operate. You begin perceiving setbacks as temporary conditions rather than permanent character verdicts. The process of building competence stacking begins with a level of honest self-assessment that most people deliberately avoid. You need to identify with genuine precision and without self-deception exactly where your current capabilities actually stand. Not where you wish they were, not where you could potentially be, but where they genuinely are right now based on actual evidence and demonstrated performance. This honesty is not an exercise in self-criticism. It is the essential prerequisite for intelligent and targeted development. When you know exactly where you are starting from, you can chart a realistic and achievable path toward where you intend to be. The practice of deliberate practice itself deserves careful attention because most people confuse repetition with development. You can repeat an activity thousands of times without meaningfully improving if you are repeating without focused attention to quality and specific elements of improvement. Deliberate practice requires that you identify specific aspects of performance to target, that you practice at the edge of your current capability rather than in your comfort zone, that you receive accurate feedback on your performance, and that you adjust your approach based on that feedback with real-time responsiveness. This type of practice is significantly more demanding than casual repetition, but it produces genuine competence that translates directly into authentic confidence in ways that casual repetition never does, regardless of volume. Social calibration also develops through the practice of post-interaction analysis. After every significant social interaction, you take a brief period to review what you observed about the dynamics, what you handled effectively, what you would approach differently with more knowledge, and what patterns you are beginning to recognize across different social environments. This reflective practice accelerates your development of social intelligence far beyond what passive experience alone would produce. Over time, you develop the capacity to read social situations with a speed and accuracy that feels almost intuitive, but is actually the product of accumulated and analyzed experience. The distinction between unconscious and conscious social competence is worth examining. Most socially skilled people cannot fully articulate how they read social dynamics because their competence has become automatic and therefore invisible to conscious examination. Your goal is to move through the stage of conscious and effortful attention to social dynamics until your social calibration becomes similarly automatic and reliably accurate. Emotional regulation as a practiced skill has implications that extend far beyond your performance in high-stakes situations. The capacity to maintain your internal equilibrium, regardless of external circumstances, directly affects the quality of every relationship you have, every decision you make, and every creative challenge you engage with. People who have developed strong emotional regulation consistently make better decisions across all domains because they are not making decisions from within emotional states that distort their perception of options and consequences. They maintain access to their full intellectual and creative resources, even in situations that would trigger significant emotional reactivity in people without this developed capacity. Building this capacity is a long-term project that rewards consistent daily practice far more than occasional intensive effort. Chapter 5. Building Magnetic Presence. Presence is the ultimate and most visible expression of dangerous confidence. It is not merely about feeling confident in your internal experience. It is about projecting confidence with such genuine consistency and depth that others register it the instant you enter a space. When you master presence at this level, you do not need to announce your confidence or perform it for an audience. People sense it immediately, instinctively, before you have spoken a single word. Most people fundamentally misunderstand what presence actually is at its core. Assume it is about being loud, assertive, or socially dominating in an obvious way. They believe it requires taking up maximum space or commanding attention through force of volume and personality. This is not presence. This is insecurity performing as confidence, and people who have developed genuine presence can identify it immediately. Real presence is calm, centered, and completely settled in itself. It does not need to prove anything to anyone in the room. It does not seek external validation to confirm its own worth. Presence of this quality operates on 4 distinct levels simultaneously: physical, vocal, emotional, and mental. You need to develop all 4 with intention and practice to create the kind of magnetic presence that draws people naturally toward you and inspires genuine trust and respect. Physical presence begins with your fundamental relationship to gravity and to your own body. The majority of people spend their lives fighting gravity at the physical level. They carry persistent tension in their shoulders, hold their jaw clenched, maintain tightness in their core, breathe shallowly into their chest. This chronic physical tension creates a rigid, defended posture that communicates insecurity and underlying anxiety to everyone observing, even when they are doing so unconsciously. Building dangerous confidence requires a fundamentally different physical relationship with your body and with gravity itself. You need to learn to work with gravity rather than against it, allowing your weight to settle naturally into your lower body, releasing your shoulders so they fall into their natural, relaxed position, unclenching your jaw and allowing your facial muscles to soften, breathing deeply into your diaphragm rather than shallowly into your chest. When you genuinely relax into gravity rather than resisting it, your posture improves naturally without conscious effort. You become more physically grounded, more stable, more genuinely centered. Others can sense this physical stability in their interactions with you, and it causes them to feel safe and at ease in your presence. They extend trust more readily because your body language communicates that you are not threatened or defensive about the interaction. Eye contact is another critical dimension of physical presence. Most people either avoid eye contact consistently, which communicates anxiety and discomfort, or they use eye contact as a form of dominance, which communicates aggression and insecurity of a different kind. Both approaches signal a lack of authentic confidence. Confident eye contact is steady, warm, and completely relaxed in its quality. There is no grasping for dominance and no desire to avoid engagement. You are simply present and genuinely engaged with the person in front of you. The fundamental key to developing confident eye contact is understanding that it emerges naturally when you are genuinely focused on understanding and connecting with another person, rather than monitoring and managing your own performance in the interaction. When your attention is directed outward toward genuine curiosity about the other person, eye contact happens organically. Movement completes the physical dimension of presence. Confident people move with deliberateness and economy. There is no anxious fidgeting, no restless pacing, no unnecessary gestures driven by nervous energy. Every movement carries purpose and intention. This does not produce rigidity or mechanical behavior. It produces a quality of ease and intentionality that others find reassuring and compelling. Vocal presence is the dimension most people consistently underestimate in its impact on how they are perceived. Your voice carries an extraordinary amount of information about your emotional state, your confidence level, and your perceived social status. People form unconscious judgments about your competence and your authority based entirely on the acoustic quality of how you sound, often before the content of what you are saying has fully registered. The foundation of vocal presence is breath support, originating from your diaphragm. Most people speak primarily from their throat, which produces a thin and constricted sound that communicates anxiety and uncertainty without the speaker being aware of it. Confident speaking is powered by deep diaphragmatic breath, which creates a rich and resonant quality that commands attention naturally. Pace is equally critical. People experiencing anxiety speak at an accelerated rate because they feel they are taking up too much time and space with their words. Genuinely confident people speak at a measured and intentional pace. They are not frightened of silence. They understand that deliberate pauses add emphasis and give their listener time to genuinely process and absorb what is being communicated. Volume and tonal quality also matter considerably more than most people realize. Speaking at a volume that is clearly audible without strain or aggression, combined with a warm and genuinely engaged tonal quality, creates the acoustic impression of someone who is focused on communicating effectively rather than defending a position or proving a point. Emotional presence is your developed capacity to remain internally centered and stable regardless of what is occurring in the environment around you. When your emotional presence is strong, other people's anxiety, anger, or negative energy does not meaningfully penetrate your internal state. You remain grounded and capable even in chaotic, high-pressure, or emotionally charged situations. This quality of stability is extraordinarily compelling to other people. In a social environment where the majority of people are emotionally reactive and internally volatile, someone who remains genuinely calm and centered stands out immediately and powerfully. They become an anchor of stability that others naturally move toward during uncertain or difficult moments. Emotional presence develops progressively through regular mindfulness practice, deliberate emotional regulation work, and the gradual development of conscious awareness of your emotional states without being controlled by them. You learn to observe your emotional responses with some degree of detachment. You develop the capacity to feel anger without acting from anger, to feel nervousness without allowing nervousness to shape your behavior, to feel uncertainty without projecting uncertainty onto the people and situations around you. Mental presence is the quality and completeness of your attention and focus in the present moment. When your mental presence is fully developed, you are completely and genuinely engaged with whatever is happening right in front of you. You are not planning what you will say next while the other person is still speaking, not monitoring how you are being perceived by observers, not rehearsing or preparing for what comes after this interaction. You are simply and completely present with what is actually occurring. This quality of attention is genuinely rare in our current environment of chronic distraction and fragmented attention. Most people are only partially present in their interactions, physically in the space, but mentally distributed across multiple concerns simultaneously. When you develop the capacity for genuine mental presence, you create a powerful experience of connection for the people you engage with. They feel authentically heard, understood, and valued in a way that is increasingly uncommon. The integration of all 4 levels of presence creates what can only be accurately described as charismatic and magnetic presence. People find themselves drawn to you without being able to fully articulate why. They trust your judgment even without an extensive history with you. They naturally incline toward your perspective and follow your lead in uncertain situations. This quality of presence cannot be performed or manufactured through surface techniques. It emerges organically from genuine confidence, real competence, and authentic self-awareness developed through consistent effort over time. Chapter 6. Controlling any room. Social dominance is not about being loud, aggressive, or physically imposing. Real social dominance is the sophisticated capacity to influence social dynamics through presence, intelligence, and strategic behavioral awareness. When you genuinely master social dominance, you become the person who establishes the tone and direction in every interaction you participate in, not through force, but through the quality of your engagement. The foundational principle of social dominance is understanding that every social interaction contains an implicit negotiation. People are continuously testing boundaries, establishing hierarchical positions, and positioning themselves relative to others in their social environment. The vast majority of people participate in these negotiations entirely unconsciously, respond emotionally to social challenges and pressures rather than engaging with them strategically. Dangerous confidence means you participate in these negotiations with conscious awareness and strategic intentionality. You understand the underlying dynamics at work, and you engage with them more skillfully than anyone else in the interaction. You do not become defensive or emotionally reactive when someone tests your boundaries or attempts to challenge your position. You recognize the dynamic clearly for what it is and respond in a way that establishes your standing while maintaining genuine respect for the other person. Frame control is the master skill underlying all of social dominance. Your frame is your interpretation of reality, your perspective on what is happening in a given situation and what it means. In every significant interaction, there exists an implicit competition between different frames being brought by different participants. Whoever maintains the strongest and most grounded frame effectively controls the direction and meaning of the interaction. When someone attempts to interrupt you during an important presentation, you have multiple frame options available. You can interpret it as disrespect and respond defensively, which confirms their dominance and undermines your position. You can interpret it as a signal that your communication is unclear and respond apologetically, which further weakens your frame. Or you can interpret it as engagement and enthusiasm, which allows you to respond from a position of genuine confidence and control. The frame you select determines the entire subsequent trajectory of the interaction. Strong frame control means you do not allow other people's emotional reactions behavioral choices, or social maneuvers to alter your fundamental interpretation of your own worth and standing. If someone is rude or dismissive in their behavior toward you, you do not automatically adopt the interpretation that you must have done something inadequate to deserve this treatment. You maintain your frame clearly, that you deserve genuine respect, and you respond from that frame with consistency. Strategic communication is the deliberate use of language, timing, and tone to influence how you are perceived and to shape the direction of your interactions. Most people communicate in a reactive and automatic mode. They say whatever comes to mind in response to whatever is happening, without considering the strategic implications of their words or the timing of their responses. Strategic communication means every element of what you choose to say serves a clear and conscious purpose. You are not merely expressing yourself or sharing information as it occurs to you. You are deliberately influencing perception, building relationships on intentional foundations, and positioning yourself advantageously within the social and professional environment. Tonality carries enormous weight in this process. The same words delivered in different tonal qualities communicate entirely different messages and create entirely different effects. A confident and grounded tone conveys authority and competence. An uncertain or rising tone conveys insecurity and invites challenge. A defensive tone conveys underlying anxiety and vulnerability. Developing conscious control over your tonal quality allows you to communicate precisely the message you intend, regardless of the emotional pressure of the situation. Timing is equally critical. Knowing exactly when to speak and when to maintain strategic silence is one of the highest level skills in social dominance. Sometimes, the most powerful and effective response to a challenge or provocation is no immediate response at all. Sometimes, the most effective way to maintain frame control is to allow other people to reveal their own insecurity through the urgency and emotional intensity of their reactions. Emotional independence is the bedrock of everything that makes social dominance genuine and sustainable. Authentic social dominance requires complete independence from other people's reactions, opinions, and behavioral choices as sources of your internal stability and confidence. Your internal state cannot be contingent on external validation or dependent on receiving approval from the people around you. You must be genuinely unaffected at your core by criticism, rejection, or negative reactions from others. This does not mean becoming emotionally disconnected or genuinely indifferent to other people's experiences. It means being so settled in your own sense of self and your own worth that other people's emotional states and behavioral choices do not destabilize your internal experience. You can care genuinely about people without being controlled by their moods. You can be empathetic and responsive without absorbing their anxiety or internalizing their anger. Emotional independence develops through the consistent and daily practice of not taking things personally as a default response. When someone behaves rudely or dismissively, you recognize that their behavior reflects something about their current internal state, not an accurate assessment of your worth or capability. When someone rejects your ideas, you receive this as potentially useful information or as a reflection of their perspective, not as a personal verdict on your value. Chapter 7. Bulletproof Psychology. In the course of any meaningful life and career, you will encounter criticism, rejection, deliberate attacks, and systematic attempts to undermine your confidence and your standing. How you navigate these challenges will determine whether you develop genuinely bulletproof psychology or remain persistently vulnerable to other people's negativity and manipulation. Most people have developed no real defense system against psychological attacks of any significant kind. They accept criticism as automatically accurate. They allow external attacks to penetrate and damage their confidence at a core level. And they permit other people's opinions to exercise significant control over their self-worth and their behavior. Dangerous confidence requires developing genuine psychological armor that protects you from external attacks that are genuinely unfounded, while keeping you appropriately open to legitimate feedback and real opportunities for growth. This protective psychological architecture is not about becoming cold, defensive, or closed off from human connection. It is about developing such strong inner certainty about your own worth and capability that external negativity simply cannot penetrate and destabilize your core sense of self. Understanding the psychology of people who attack others is the essential first component of bulletproof psychology. People who attack, demean, or attempt to undermine others are almost always operating from their own unresolved insecurity, fear, or pain. Genuinely confident and secure people have no psychological need to tear others down. They do not need to criticize, demean, or undermine because they are not threatened by other people's success or capability. They are genuinely focused on building their own excellence rather than managing their anxiety through attacks on others. When someone attempts to attack you in some form, they are revealing something significant about their own internal experience, not providing an accurate assessment of your actual capabilities or worth. They may be experiencing threat in response to your confidence or your progress. They may be projecting their own unacknowledged insecurities onto you as the nearest available target. They may simply be processing their own difficulties and misdirecting that energy in your direction. Understanding this does not require you to excuse destructive behavior or to accept it as appropriate, but it does allow you to receive it accurately, as information about the attacker rather than as evidence of your own inadequacy. Criticism arrives in two fundamentally different forms: constructive feedback and destructive attack. Constructive feedback is specific in its content, actionable in its implications, and delivered with genuine good intention. Its purpose is to help you improve your performance or your understanding. Destructive attack is vague and personal in its nature, and delivered with hostile or manipulative intent. Its purpose is to damage your confidence or undermine your standing. Developing the ability to distinguish reliably between these two forms of criticism is absolutely central to building bulletproof psychology. When you receive genuinely constructive feedback, You listen with full and careful attention. Extract whatever genuine value it contains and use it as a resource for your ongoing development. When you face destructive attack, you recognize it clearly for what it actually is and refuse to allow it to penetrate your core sense of self-worth. Cognitive immunity is your developed capacity to evaluate all incoming information objectively and rigorously, rather than accepting it automatically and uncritically. Most people have no real cognitive immunity. They accept whatever they hear about themselves, particularly when it is negative in character, without subjecting it to any meaningful evaluation of its source, its accuracy, or its intent. When someone criticizes you in any significant way, you develop the practice of asking yourself a rigorous set of evaluative questions. Is this person genuinely qualified to assess this specific aspect of my performance or my life? Do they possess sufficient information and perspective to make an informed judgment? Do they have genuine good intentions toward my development? Or is there a different agenda operating? Is their criticism specific and actionable, or vague and personal in character? Is there actual evidence supporting their claims? Or are they making assertions based on limited information or emotional reaction? This evaluation process is not a defensive rationalization. It is a rigorous filtering mechanism that protects you from internalizing unfair or inaccurate criticism, while keeping you genuinely open to legitimate and valuable feedback. Reframing adversity as deliberate strength training is the final component of bulletproof psychology worth examining in depth. Every attack, every criticism, every rejection, and every difficult challenge you face can be consciously reframed as an opportunity to strengthen your psychological resilience rather than as evidence of your inadequacy or as a reason to retreat. Just as physical muscle develops strength and capability through progressive resistance and challenge, your psychological resilience grows stronger and more robust when subjected to managed adversity. When someone attempts to destabilize your confidence, you use it as a training opportunity for maintaining your composure under pressure. When someone rejects your ideas, you use it as practice for handling disappointment with grace and without losing your forward momentum. When someone questions your capability, you use it as motivation to develop even greater, genuine competence in the relevant area. The physical dimension of presence also includes how you manage and deploy your energy within a space. Genuinely confident people do not dissipate their energy through anxious movement or scattered attention. They direct it with intention, which creates a quality of focused potency in their presence that others can sense even when they cannot name it. This management of personal energy is not about performing stillness or manufactured calm. It is the organic result of not being at internal war with yourself about whether you belong in the space or deserve the attention you are receiving. When that internal conflict is resolved through genuine competence and self-acceptance, the energy that was previously consumed maintaining the conflict becomes available for genuine engagement with the people and situations around you. The vocal dimension of presence benefits from understanding the relationship between emotional state and voice quality. Your voice is remarkably sensitive to your internal emotional state and will betray anxiety, insecurity, or defensiveness to a trained listener even when your words are carefully controlled. Conversely, when your emotional regulation is strong and your internal state is genuinely grounded, your voice naturally acquires qualities of warmth, steadiness, and resonance that communicate confidence before any specific content is processed. This is why developing the emotional and physical dimensions of presence is actually prerequisite to developing genuine vocal presence. You cannot fully train your voice in isolation from the internal states that shape it. Frame control deserves additional examination because it is perhaps the most sophisticated and nuanced element of social dominance to actually develop in practice. The challenge is that most people's frames are not consciously chosen, but rather absorbed from their social environment, their family of origin, and the cultural narratives they have been exposed to throughout their development. Before you can develop strong and conscious frame control, you need to identify what frames you are currently operating from automatically and unconsciously. Many of these inherited frames are limiting in ways you have never examined directly. Frames like the belief that confidence must be earned through external achievement, or that you need others' approval before acting on your own judgment, or that expressing a strong opinion is somehow aggressive or inappropriate. Identifying and consciously examining these inherited frames is the prerequisite to replacing them with frames that actually support the development and expression of dangerous confidence. Strategic communication also includes the often overlooked element of what you choose not to say and when you choose not to speak. The ability to remain silent and composed when challenged or provoked is one of the clearest signals of genuine psychological security. People who feel internally secure do not feel compelled to respond to every provocation or justify every decision. They speak when they have something genuinely worth saying, and their composure in moments of silence communicates more confidence than any anxiously produced response could. Bulletproof psychology in practice requires daily commitment rather than occasional application. The habits of cognitive evaluation, frame maintenance, and emotional regulation that constitute bulletproof psychology are not skills you apply only when significant challenges arrive. They are practiced continuously in small interactions and low-stakes situations, so that they are deeply established and automatic when the high-stakes moments actually arrive. The work happens in the ordinary moments so that the extraordinary moments reveal what you have built. Chapter 8: High-Pressure Performance. The true and ultimate test of dangerous confidence is the quality of your performance under conditions of genuine pressure. Anyone with functional self-esteem can feel confident in comfortable and familiar situations where the outcome does not matter very much. But real confidence of the dangerous variety means maintaining your clarity, your composure, and your genuine capability when the stakes are high, the timeline is compressed, and everything that matters is actually on the line. High-pressure situations strip away every layer of pretense and expose who you actually are beneath the performance. They eliminate the possibility of faking your way through with surface techniques. They demand authentic competence and inner certainty that have been tested and proven through real experience rather than imagined through visualization alone. When pressure arrives at its most intense, your nervous system activates the same ancient survival responses your distant ancestors relied upon in genuinely life-threatening situations. Your physiology floods with stress hormones. Your heart rate accelerates dramatically. Your breathing becomes rapid and shallow. Your attention narrows significantly. Your prefrontal cortex begins to lose its full operational capacity as your limbic system takes increasing control. For the majority of people, this physiological cascade is devastating to performance. They become reactive and impulsive rather than strategic and intentional. They make poor decisions because they cannot access their full cognitive capacity. They communicate below their actual ability because their nervous system is actively working against them rather than with them. But this same physiological arousal, when you understand it correctly and have prepared for it deliberately, can actually enhance performance rather than impair it. The identical physical activation that destroys some people's performance under pressure can sharpen focus, amplify energy, and genuinely elevate performance for those who have learned to work with it rather than against it. The difference is not in the intensity of the physiological response. It is in how you interpret that response and what you do with the energy it generates. The first and most immediately applicable principle of high-pressure performance is reframing physiological arousal as excitement rather than as anxiety or threat. The physical experience of genuine excitement and the physical experience of anxiety are neurologically nearly identical. Elevated heart rate, heightened sensory alertness, elevated available energy. The sole difference between these two experiences is the cognitive story you tell yourself about what these physical sensations mean and predict. When you deliberately interpret this arousal as excitement and as preparation for meaningful performance, it enhances your output. When you interpret it as anxiety signaling that something may go wrong, it consistently impairs your performance. This reframing requires deliberate and repeated practice to become automatic, but it is one of the highest leverage skills available to you for high-pressure situations. The second principle is developing what elite athletes and performers refer to as the zone state. This is a specific psychological state in which you are completely absorbed in present-moment execution, performing at the upper range of your capability with minimal conscious effort and self-monitoring. In the zone, self-doubt becomes inaccessible. Fear loses its grip. You are purely and completely focused on the execution in front of you. This state has specific and reproducible psychological characteristics. Time perception shifts in interesting ways. Tasks that are genuinely difficult feel deceptively effortless. Self-consciousness dissolves. Performance becomes automatic and fluid in quality. You stop consciously monitoring what you are doing and simply do it, with genuine confidence and full capability available. Accessing the zone consistently requires 3 conditions to be present simultaneously. You need a clear and specific objective, precise knowledge of what you are attempting to accomplish. You need immediate and accurate feedback on your performance as it unfolds. And the challenge level needs to be properly calibrated. Neither so easy that it fails to engage your full attention, nor so overwhelming that it triggers a panic response. Effective preparation is the third principle of high-pressure performance, and it is worth understanding precisely why most people's approach to preparation actually increases their pressure rather than reducing it. Most people prepare for high-stakes situations by attempting to memorize specific responses or rehearse exact sequences. This type of preparation increases anxiety because it makes you rigid and dependent on specific anticipated conditions. The moment actual circumstances deviate in any meaningful way from what you rehearsed, your confidence collapses because your preparation has become useless. Preparation that genuinely builds confidence focuses on developing adaptive capability rather than fixed and specific responses. Instead of memorizing the exact words you will say, you become so genuinely knowledgeable about your subject matter that you can engage with it fluently and confidently from any angle and under any conditions. Instead of rehearsing specific scenarios, you develop general competencies that apply effectively across a wide range of situations. This approach builds what psychologists call self-efficacy, genuine confidence in your ability to handle whatever actually emerges, not just what you specifically anticipated. Breath control is the fourth principle and the practical foundation of everything else in high-pressure performance. Your breathing directly and immediately governs your nervous system activation state. When you breathe slowly and deeply from your diaphragm, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes the calm, clear, and strategic thinking you need for optimal performance. When you breathe quickly and shallowly, you amplify your sympathetic nervous system activation, which generates and escalates stress responses. Learning to maintain deliberate control over your breathing when pressure intensifies gives you a form of direct access to your own nervous system regulation that nothing else can match. Using pressure itself as fuel for extraordinary performance is the final principle worth internalizing. Rather than attempting to minimize pressure or reduce its influence on your performance, you learn to harness its energy as enhancement. Pressure becomes a clear signal that something genuinely important is happening, and that this is precisely the moment to bring your highest level of effort and engagement. The most accomplished performers in every demanding field have internalized this principle. They do not attempt to avoid pressure situations or minimize their exposure to high stakes. They actively seek out situations of genuine pressure because they understand that pressure is what brings their best performance to the surface. Chapter 9. Unshakable Self-Worth. Genuine and lasting confidence cannot be constructed on external foundations of any kind. It cannot be reliably based on your achievements to date, your current possessions, other people's approval of you, or the temporary circumstances of your life at any given moment. All of these external factors can change or disappear with very little warning, and when they do, any confidence built primarily upon them will collapse along with them. Dangerous confidence requires self-worth that is unshakable because it is rooted in your core identity rather than in your current external circumstances. Most people build their sense of confidence like a structure with no stable foundation. They accumulate achievement upon achievement, approval upon approval, success upon success, hoping to eventually reach a threshold where they finally feel genuinely and permanently good enough about themselves. But this approach contains a fundamental and irreparable design flaw, because it makes your confidence permanently dependent on maintaining consistent external performance and receiving continuous external validation. The first and most essential pillar of unshakable self-worth is separating your sense of identity from your results. You are not your achievements. You are not the sum of your failures. You are not your job title, your income level, your relationship status, or any metric by which the external world measures and ranks human beings. These are all external circumstances that can and do change throughout any meaningful life. Your core identity is something considerably deeper and more permanent than any of these. This separation requires developing what psychologists call outcome independence, the ability to care genuinely and deeply about your results while not deriving your fundamental self-worth from them. You can be genuinely disappointed by a failure without allowing that disappointment to reframe your assessment of your own basic worth. You can be proud of a meaningful success without becoming dependent on replicating that success to maintain your confidence. Living with consistent alignment to your core values is the second pillar of unshakable self-worth, and perhaps the most practically actionable. Values are the principles and convictions that actually guide your decisions and behavior when things become difficult and the easy path diverges from the right one. When you live in genuine alignment with your values, you experience a deep sense of internal integrity and authenticity that does not require external validation to feel real. When you consistently violate your values, you feel internal conflict and insecurity, regardless of how your external circumstances appear to others. The majority of people have never done the careful reflective work of clearly identifying what their actual core values are. They move through life making decisions based primarily on immediate convenience, on other people's expectations, or on social pressure, without a clear and stable internal compass to orient them. Identifying your genuine values requires honest and sometimes uncomfortable self-examination, not about what you believe you should value or what others expect you to value, but about what actually matters to you deeply when you strip away social performance and honest with yourself about what drives your most meaningful choices. Anti-fragility is the final pillar worth understanding in depth. This concept, developed in resilience research, describes the specific quality of not merely surviving adversity with your confidence intact, but actually growing meaningfully stronger as a direct result of encountering adversity. Most people are psychologically fragile in the face of genuine challenge. Adversity diminishes their confidence and their sense of capability. Some people develop genuine resilience, the ability to recover from adversity back to their previous level of functioning. But truly anti-fragile people actually benefit from adversity in measurable ways. Challenges make them demonstrably more capable, more self-aware, and more genuinely confident over time. They do not merely recover from setbacks. They use each setback as raw material for meaningful growth and development that would not have been possible without the adversity. Chapter 10. Fear Alchemy. Fear is not your opposition. Fear is raw and powerful energy that can either immobilize you completely or propel you to extraordinary performance beyond what you believed possible. The determining factor is not the intensity of the fear itself, but what you do with the energy it generates. Most people carry a fundamentally backwards relationship with fear throughout their entire lives. They spend enormous amounts of energy trying to eliminate fear, avoid situations that produce it, or pretend that it does not exist or does not affect them. This approach is not merely ineffective, it is directly counterproductive because it positions you in permanent resistance to a fundamental and unavoidable aspect of human psychology. Fear is information. It tells you clearly that something that genuinely matters to you is at stake. You do not experience genuine fear about things that hold no real significance for your life and your goals. The presence of fear is your psychological system's way of communicating that you are approaching something where the outcome could meaningfully impact your trajectory, your relationships, or your well-being. This information is genuinely valuable. The things that produce the most intense fear in you are very often the things that would produce the most significant positive impact on your life, if you could successfully move through them. Fear is actually pointing you toward your greatest available opportunities for growth and meaningful achievement. Fear is energy because it activates powerful physiological responses that can substantially enhance performance when directed and channeled correctly. When you feel genuine fear, your body releases significant quantities of adrenaline and related stress hormones that increase your alertness, sharpen your focus, and amplify your available physical and cognitive capacity. This physiological arousal is the identical energy that elite athletes harness to break records and produce peak performances. It becomes negative and performance impairing only when you interpret it as a signal that you should stop, retreat, or avoid the situation rather than as a signal to engage at your highest level. The first and most immediately applicable technique of fear alchemy is the cognitive reframe of fear as excitement. As previously established, the physiological experience of these two states is nearly identical in its physical manifestations. The only actual difference is the interpretive story your cognitive mind tells about what these physical sensations mean and predict. When you feel those familiar physical sensations of fear before something significant, instead of accepting the automatic thought that something is likely to go wrong, you deliberately and consciously choose the thought that something meaningful and important is about to happen, and you are physiologically prepared to engage with it fully. This reframe changes your entire relationship with the experience from one of resistance and avoidance to one of anticipation and engagement. Progressive exposure to the specific situations and circumstances that generate fear in you is the second technique for developing genuine fear tolerance. Just as physical strength develops through progressive resistance training that systematically challenges your current capacity, psychological resilience develops through progressive exposure that systematically challenges your current fear tolerance. You deliberately and systematically expose yourself to situations that produce manageable levels of fear, building your tolerance and your confidence gradually through accumulated successful experience. Each successful navigation of a fear-producing situation provides your nervous system with concrete evidence that the situation is manageable. Your brain updates its threat assessment based on this new evidence, and your confidence in similar situations grows measurably. Chapter 11. Building Unstoppable Momentum. Dangerous confidence is not simply about feeling confident in individual, isolated moments. It is about building momentum that carries you forward consistently, regardless of the obstacles, setbacks, and unexpected challenges you will inevitably encounter. Momentum is the critical differentiating factor between people who achieve extraordinary things across time and people who remain trapped in cycles of initial enthusiasm followed by stagnation. The foundation of momentum is understanding the psychology of consistency and what it does to your brain's self-perception. Your brain is an extraordinarily efficient pattern recognition system that constantly seeks and registers evidence about who you are and what you are genuinely capable of based on your behavioral history. Every action you take either reinforces a positive pattern or reinforces a negative pattern in your brain's ongoing self-model. Every meaningful choice you make is either building momentum in a valuable direction or diminishing it. When you consistently take positive and committed action, your brain progressively builds a self-image of someone who follows through on commitments, who keeps their word to themselves, who achieves their goals through sustained effort. This positive identity makes future positive actions easier and increasingly automatic. Your brain begins defaulting to an expectation of success because success has become your established behavioral pattern. Momentum is built primarily through small and consistent actions, rather than through occasional dramatic gestures or periods of intense effort followed by collapse. Real and lasting momentum develops through what researchers describe as marginal gains, small but consistent improvements and incremental actions that compound over time into significant and extraordinary cumulative results. The key insight is that you do not need to make dramatic and unsustainable changes to build powerful momentum. You need to make small and genuinely sustainable changes that you can maintain consistently over months and years without requiring extraordinary willpower or ideal circumstances. Creating positive feedback loops is the second essential principle of momentum mastery. These are self-reinforcing cycles in which positive actions generate positive results, which motivate and enable additional positive actions, which produce even better results in a compounding progression. Once you establish genuinely positive feedback loops in key areas of your development, momentum begins sustaining and amplifying itself without requiring constant, deliberate effort to maintain. Developing operational momentum, the military strategist's concept of maintaining forward progress even when individual efforts encounter failure or specific strategies prove inadequate, is the third principle. Operational momentum requires separating your fundamental identity and your commitment to your direction from the outcomes of any specific individual effort or strategy. You are not pursuing perfection in individual moments or efforts. You are maintaining consistent forward progress over meaningful time. Some days will produce exceptional results. Some strategies will prove more effective than others. Some specific efforts will encounter failure, while others succeed. None of this matters as long as your overall developmental trajectory remains consistently positive. Energy management, rather than the more familiar concept of time management, is the fourth principle of momentum mastery. The realization that energy, not time, is your most genuinely finite and valuable resource changes everything about how you approach the development of confidence and capability. You can manufacture more time through better organization, but you cannot manufacture more energy. You can only manage, protect, and strategically direct the energy you have. Physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy, and creative energy each follow predictable patterns and can be meaningfully optimized through specific strategies. Building powerful momentum requires aligning your most important developmental activities with your peak energy periods, rather than simply trying to do more within each day, regardless of your energy state. Chapter 12. The Complete Transformation. Everything developed and examined through this comprehensive system has been building toward this moment of integration. Your complete transformation from the person you currently are into someone who operates from dangerous confidence as their natural and default state. When you fully commit to implementing these principles and practices with consistency and genuine intention, you will become recognizably different from who you were before you began. Not in some subtle or incremental way. Recognizably, fundamentally, and genuinely different in how you carry yourself, how you engage with challenges, and how other people experience you. Your internal dialogue will shift from persistent self-doubt to unshakable inner certainty about your capacity to navigate whatever life presents. Your relationship with failure will transform completely from experiencing it as evidence of inadequacy to receiving it as valuable information that accelerates your development. Your relationship with other people's opinions will shift from dependence on external approval to genuine appreciation when it arrives, without any psychological need for it to sustain your confidence. The behavioral transformation is equally profound and observable. You will begin taking actions that would have felt genuinely impossible to your previous self. You will speak with authority and clarity, rather than hedging every statement with qualifications. You will pursue opportunities you previously believed were beyond your realistic reach. You will have the difficult and necessary conversations you previously avoided. You will take calculated risks that your previous risk aversion had placed entirely off limits. The social transformation will touch every relationship in your life. Some existing relationships will improve dramatically as you bring higher energy, clearer communication, and stronger and more consistent boundaries. Others will naturally conclude because they were structured around your previous insecurity and cannot survive your genuine growth. You will attract fundamentally different types of people, individuals who are themselves confident, ambitious, and genuinely oriented toward growth. Your professional trajectory will shift as well. Opportunities that were previously unavailable to you will begin to emerge because decision-makers at every level can sense genuine confidence and capability when they encounter it. The ongoing maintenance of dangerous confidence requires understanding that transformation of this depth and authenticity is not a destination you reach and then maintain passively. It is an ongoing and dynamic process that requires continued challenge, continued growth, and continued contribution to purposes larger than your own immediate interests. You must continue seeking situations that genuinely stretch your current capabilities and force you to grow beyond your established comfort boundaries. You must continue developing new competencies, engaging with new challenges, and deliberately expanding your operational range. The moment you become genuinely complacent is the moment you begin losing the hard-won confidence you have built through sustained and deliberate effort. The ultimate expression of dangerous confidence is not the personal success and professional achievement that naturally follow from it, as real and significant as those outcomes will be. The ultimate expression is becoming the kind of person who makes the world around them genuinely better through their presence, their contributions, and their example. Someone who inspires others to pursue their own development and their own genuine capability. Someone who demonstrates with their actual life that it is entirely possible to be genuinely confident without arrogance, strong without cruelty, and successful without sacrificing integrity. This is what dangerous confidence ultimately means and ultimately becomes. Not a tool for dominating others or for proving your superiority. A state of being so settled in your own values, so clear about your own identity, and so committed to using your genuine capability for meaningful outcomes that nothing external can meaningfully shake your core sense of direction and purpose. And that is the journey you have now begun. Not towards some distant and theoretical version of yourself that you are hoping to eventually become, but toward the person you are actually capable of being right now, today, with the knowledge and the commitment you currently possess. The only remaining question is whether you will take what you have learned here and apply it with the consistency and the courage that the transformation genuinely requires. You have the understanding now. You have the system. You have the psychological framework. What you do with it from this moment forward is entirely in your hands. Your dangerous confidence begins not someday, It begins with your very next decision.